Welcome back to my keto kitchen, Keto Naturopath Kitchen. It's almost time for Thanksgiving, so today I'm doing a pie that is great for Thanksgiving. Dr. Carl's favorite pie is blueberry pie, and I used to make him a blueberry pie all the time, but since turning keto, I really didn't have a crust that I liked. Last year I made a crustless blueberry pie, and it was great. So today I'm making it with a crust, and the crust I'm using is my crust that has no nuts, no flours. It's basically egg, and it's my favorite crust to use right now. So just warning you, if you hear some running around and little cries, my two male cats have the zoomies and they're chasing each other all over the place. So to start off, we're going to get the crust ready. I have 3 egg whites in here, and to that I'm adding a tablespoon of egg white powder, 1/4 teaspoon of gelatin, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I don't like a lot of sweet things, as I've mentioned before, so I do not add sweetener to my crust because the pie itself is sweet enough. If you want to add sweetener, you could add a drop or 2 of liquid stevia, or maybe half a teaspoon of granular sweetener if you choose. So we're going to whip this to a stiff peak. I have used this pie crust for several things now since I discovered it. I've used it for my pumpkin pie. I've used it for our crab meat pie that we have every Christmas Eve. It's a tradition for Christmas Eve to have a crab pie. And you just fold in the egg yolks. Egg yolks folded into the beaten up egg whites gives it a nice texture. It's richer than just egg whites. I've been doing egg yolks in a lot of things. Sometimes I make my focaccia by adding the egg yolks back into the egg whites for non-precision PSMF days. And if you've watched any of Dr. Carl's videos, you know that he really believes in eating egg yolks, especially if you're not eating liver. So I have a 9-inch pie plate, and I forgot to preheat my oven to 325. So I'm going to spray this pie plate. Now I've made this pie crust before, and I've only used 2 eggs, and sometimes the crust wasn't enough, so I am trying it with 3 eggs, and I will be altering the recipe to use 3 eggs. Now I made this pie last week for you, and I did not like the way it turned out, and when I get to the blueberry part, I will tell you why. So I was like, I have to make it so it's right and that it tastes good. So here we are, week number 2. We didn't even eat the last one. It was just not good enough. So I'm really looking forward to this because I like blueberry pie too. Now we're going to set this in a 325-degree oven for 5 minutes. Why do we do that? The crust has to crust up a little so that you can put the filling in it. Otherwise, the filling's just going to mush into the crust. So, as I said, I did not preheat my oven. So while that's preheating, I will get the blueberries. The reason my pie last week did not come out great is that I used regular blueberries instead of wild blueberries. Wild blueberries are smaller, they're juicier, they're sweeter, and when I made it last week, the blueberries didn't gel up and lose it was just blueberries. So you just felt like you were eating blueberries on a crust. So I'm like, no, this is not good enough. I have to make it again. So we're going to start off with 630 grams of frozen wild blueberries, and it's about 6 cups. The brand I usually buy is Wyman's because I know they're good. I know that Walmart has a brand of wild blueberries. I wasn't sure if they'd be small like Wyman's, so I bought Wyman's. I paid the little extra for Wyman's just to make sure that it came out great. So 630 grams. So see, these are nice and small. They're not like the other blueberries, regular blueberries. Regular blueberries are thicker, bigger. They're not as juicy. The regular blueberries, they're okay if you're going to make blueberry jam, which I have used them before. Still, the wild ones are even better for the blueberry jam because, as I mentioned, they juice up a lot better. Okay, to this, I have to add 60 grams of sweetener. I usually use xylitol. The only sweeteners we can use are xylitol and stevia, any erythritol, which includes monk fruit because it's mostly erythritol, gives me extreme headaches, and allulose gives me extreme gastric issues. I am just making this with liquid bitter stevia, which is not bitter, and I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla flavored stevia. So instead of the 60 grams of granular stevia, I'm just using 60 grams of granular sweetener. I'm using, and this is a brand, I use so much of this vanilla stevia. We get it on Wellevate, and I just ordered a bunch the other day because it's baking season. Adding 2 teaspoons of gelatin just to make sure that it gels together and is not soupy. Even though if you've seen my blueberry jam, it will gel, but I'm using this anyway just in case. I have a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. Yes, salt. A half a teaspoon of cinnamon. A tablespoon of lemon juice. I love the way the lemon juice makes it a little tangy. And it's a tablespoon. I'm just going to pour some in. And you mix it all up. Make sure it's all mixed up. Break up any lumps. Now this is the first time I've made it without any granular sweetener, so we'll see how it comes out. If it doesn't come out like it did before, I will use granular sweetener next time, but it should. And if you're wondering why we're trying not to use xylitol, if you, again, watch Dr. Carl's videos on gout, that seems that sugar alcohols tend to increase uric acid, which is not good if you ever have any gout symptoms. So I'm putting the pie shell in for 5 minutes at 325 degrees, and we'll be back in 5 minutes to finish it off. So the pie crust was in there for 5 minutes, and the reason we do that, if you see, it's not completely cooked, but now there's a little crustiness to it, so I can put the blueberries on it. I have increased the temperature on the oven to 375, and now we're just going to put the blueberries in the pie crust. Get it all to the edges. It will get bubbly and bubble over, so I don't know if I want it too close to the edges. So we're going to put this in a 375 degree oven for 50 to 60 minutes, depending on the temperature of your oven. My oven tends to be a little cooler than ovens in the past. I think that's because this is a gas oven. I'm used to cooking with electric ovens. I love my gas stove top, but I also prefer electric ovens, but I have what I have. So this is going in for 50 minutes, and it should be bubbly, and after 50 minutes I'll take it out and show you what it looks like. Okay, we're back to taste the blueberry pie. This looks a lot better than the pie I made last week with the bigger blueberries. The smaller blueberries work way better. However, next time I would thaw out the blueberries. Whenever I've made blueberry pie, I've always made it with frozen blueberries. For some reason, when I make the no crust blueberry pie, it works out fine. I'm not sure if it's because it's hitting the hot pan and with the crust it isn't, but I will change the recipe to say use thawed wild blueberries. Now, not fresh wild blueberries, frozen, thawed, wild blueberries. Okay, enough of that. Taste it. It doesn't look pretty, but the juice kind of overflowed, so the crust is a little purple. Doesn't matter. The blueberries have solidified. Again, thaw the blueberries. Oh, this tastes so good though. Oh yeah. And even though the crust looks like it's charred, it's not. It's just blueberry juice on it. So if you're making this for guests, thaw the blueberries, put it in the pie shell for 50 to 60 minutes, let it cool, maybe even put it in the refrigerator if you want to so that the gelatin gels it more. Again, I made this with just liquid stevia. It came out fine. Oh, this tastes good.